If you're a Tony Ferguson fan, things right now have been rough, with a 5-fight losing streak that showcases Tony being pushed to the very edge of his capabilities, only this time he doesn't make it back with a win. But for now, let's go to the fight that started it all, the fight that killed El Kukui. Before UFC 249, Tony Ferguson was an unstoppable beast. His unorthodox striking, underrated ground game and crazy endurance and durability earned him a 12-fight win streak and the nickname of Boogeyman. His last loss was handed to him by Michael Johnson, but that becomes important later. For now, it's ancient history. The only matchup that Tony and the fans care about is with Khabib Nurmagomedov. He was Tony's initial opponent for UFC 249, but the matchup had fell through 4 times prior, so it was disappointing but expected when Khabib announced he couldn't compete. The bout was then scheduled to take place on the 9th of May, giving Ferguson only a month and 3 days to adjust to his new opponent, Justin the Highlight Gaethje. Now on paper, stylistically, this was a great matchup for Tony. I mean, look at Gaethje's career prior. Sure, he used to be 18-0, but he was now bouncing back from 2 consecutive losses against Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, both of which displayed Justin losing composure and stamina as the fight went on, staying in the pocket and taking excessive damage to land bigger shots. Contrast this with Tony, who had a habit of getting better as the fight progressed, and add in the fact that Gaethje's 3 wins after those losses were first-round knockouts. There was no reason to assume that this wasn't stylistically, at least, in Ferguson's favour. However, you have to remember 2 things. Tony has only a month to adjust to a drastically different fighter than the one he's been preparing for, and Justin Gaethje has Trevor Wittman as a coach. Why is that so significant? Well, Trevor has a habit of coaching his fighters into finding the weaknesses of his opponents and squeezing them into finishes. Weaknesses found particularly in striking, and within striking particularly in boxing. And this fight was no different. In fact, he concocted the perfect plan to put away the boogeyman for good, by targeting Tony's weaknesses in boxing. However, to see where the plan started, we need to take a look at the Michael Johnson fight. We see this when Michael constantly circles one way to bait Ferguson into throwing with the opposite hand. This happens because as a fighter it just feels natural and less awkward than throwing with a corresponding hand. You could, but then you'd have to step and shift, which Tony does, but naturally this is a tell which leaves him open to get countered. So with a little bit of tweaking from southpaw to orthodox, we now have Gaethje's best weapon for the fight. 2 minutes into round 1, Gaethje starts to circle right, and as soon as he sees Tony moves his foot to plant, he knows that lead hand is coming. So he goes to parry it and fires off the straight right before Tony can shift his weight back and get out of danger. However, it's not until later in the fight when Gaethje is able to get some real crack behind it, when he's circling right and Ferguson lunges in with a straight that he doubles up into a jab, while Gaethje plants and throws the straight. Gaethje starts to time it so well that he manages to get Ferguson without waiting for the counter, just by seeing the step. But only at the end of the round does Justin reveal his second weapon, the left hook. Gaethje circles to the left and baits the left hook from Tony, and goes for the usual right straight counter, but Tony shifts himself from the center line. Problem is that he's off balance, but he still goes for some counters of his own. During that, Justin sneakily pivots his foot outside of Tony's stance, so by the time Gaethje fires off his left hook, he's solid and planted and goes through Tony. But if you want to know how bad the impact of this was, all you need to do is the ear test and you'll hear the difference.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Moving well defensively tonight as well.
And this is the story of round 2 in a nutshell. But toward the end of the round, there's a noticeable shift, as Gaethje's now comfortable trading with Tony, which leads to him getting dropped badly and earning himself a scolding from his coach.
Take 10% off your shots. You're trying to kill him. Pop him with good, clean shots.
And Gaethje does just that. He pops him with that straight. He also uses his angle countering technique to set up his leg kick, and naturally the left hook comes behind it. Round 4, we see everything on display. The right straight, the left hook, the leg kicks, and Gaethje even starts to get his jab off. That not only sets up combinations,
those leg kicks, it's not, goodness,
but also does considerable damage in and of itself.
What a jab, look at that.
So it's only fitting that the boogeyman gets finished by it. In many ways, this loss was way worse than a loss to Khabib could have ever been. If Khabib had won, he would have subbed him, or at the very worst mauled him. And after so many unanswered shots, the ref would have had no choice but to stop it. But against Gaethje, his durability worked against him. If he wasn't able to take those massive shots, he would have got TKO'd or at the very worst slept. And that wouldn't have been as bad as this. I mean, look how he shakes his head when he eats that jab. That's not normal. This fight definitely took years off of Tony's life and killed his career. He's never been the same since, with loss after loss after loss. It's really tragic that the same toughness that made him the boogeyman gets him torn to shreds now. Funny thing is though, Gaethje has never been able to quite capture the same combination of precision, cool-headedness and perception. However, all of this goes to show you where listening to a smart and dedicated coach can get you. As always, like and subscribe for more content like this.